awesome people. Welcome to this week's episode of Sew Addicts. Hey guys, welcome to this week's tutorial. Today we are doing a transformative video, which I actually haven't done in a while. Yeah, I haven't done a transformative video in a while, so I figured why not take a stab at it this week. This week we are transforming a big oversized skirt into a cute blouse, blousey blouse. I guess, yeah. So I was really excited about the outcome of this tutorial. I actually got my oversized skirt at the thrift store and I was super gravitated to the pleats and just the fabric in general. So if you happen to just have an oversized anything or oversized skirt laying around, you can definitely make this tutorial. So I'm super excited to dive right in. If you haven't hit the subscribe button already, please make sure to join the Sew Addicts family by clicking that red subscribe button down at the bottom of this screen so we can get started. So getting started with our deconstruction process, as you can see, I do have my skirt here and we are going to basically separate the front from the back. So I'm going to the side seam of my skirt and I'm just going to open that up, cutting side seams from the bottom of my skirt to the top, making sure I'm doing that on both sides. So this is going to give us fabric for our front and back patterns. So here I have my front fabric and now we're going to start drafting our blouse basically. So I just grabbed a ruler and I'm going to start a little about 2 inches away from the top of my waistband there, and I'm just drawing a nice straight line on my fabric. So after drawing a straight line, then we're going to take our tape measure and actually measure how wide we want our front to be. So our front is going to be about 7 inches wide. Since we're cutting this right on a flat pattern and not unfold, I'm going to be drafting both sides simultaneously. So as you can see, I have my middle point here and I marked 3.5 on one side and 3.5 on the other. Then we're going to measure about 3.5 inches from our straight line down. This is going to be our bust point. Now you want to take your bust measurement and divide that by 2. So as you can see, I'm just marking out that line, making sure it's nice and straight so I can draw out my bust measurement. So your bust measurement divided by 2 and just add a 1/2 inch. So as you can see, because again I am drafting this flat, I have to make sure that I am distributing my measurements evenly on both sides. Now the only reason I'm drafting my pattern this way and not unfold is because I'm actually using the pleats, so I have to make sure that the pleats are going to lay nice and flat when I'm drafting out the pattern. So if your fabric doesn't have any pleats or anything like that, you can just draft your pattern unfold with the fabric folded in half. So after doing that, then we're just going to connect our top front line as you constructed before to the bust point, as you guys can see. So I just connected with a nice curve there, creating the armholes. Now we're going to go ahead and finish up the rest of our pattern by extending our line here and creating the side seams for our front pattern. So now we're just creating a nice diagonal line from the top of our bust point all the way to the bottom, and we're just creating a nice hemline. So I measure from the top of my front all the way to the bottom about 20 inches. That was how long I wanted my blouse to be. You can make yours definitely longer. And now I'm just finishing up the hem by making sure I have a nice rounded hem at the bottom. After finishing up our hemline, then we're going to go back to the top of our front pattern and extend that portion about 1.5 inches. So this is going to be the seam allowance for the top of our front. So you want to measure out 1.5 inches. So after measuring out the 1.5 inches, then we're going to go ahead and actually add a 1/2 inch seam allowance all around. As you can see, I am desperately trying to make sure that my pleats are laying nice and flat as I am drawing over my pattern lines. So you just want to make sure to add a 1/2 inch around and 1 inch at the bottom of your hem, and then cut out your pattern. So once you're done cutting it out, it should look something like this. Kind of has this accordion cool looking shape. Moving on to the back is pretty much the same as the front. We're going to be drafting it the same way. So I'm just marking here a starting point at the middle of the fabric. And now again, I'm just going ahead and drawing a nice straight line for us to get started, making sure that I am about 2 inches away from the waistband. I have my nice straight line, and now we're going to measure about 7 inches just like we did for the front, and that's how wide we want our back to be. But then instead of 3.5 just like we did for the front, we're going to be going 5.5 for our back. So we're measuring 5.5, and that's going to be the highest point of our back. Then we're going to finish drafting the back by basically just identifying again our bust measurements divided by 2, also adding 1/2 inch on both sides, and then just extending that part all the way to the bottom, creating our hemline, adding seam allowances all around, and creating our armholes just like we did before, and also adding that 1.5 inch seam allowance at the top of our back pattern just like we did for the front. Now when it comes to finishing up the hemline for the back, I would recommend you grab your front pattern and just place it on the side seams from the armhole to the bottom and mark, making sure that they're both nice and even before you actually cut your fabric out. So I only did this because my fabric was pleated and it did move a lot, so I had to make sure that everything was placing nice and flat. So after doing that, you want to make sure to cut your back pattern just like we did for the front. So after cutting out my patterns, I actually went ahead and also stitched down the edges so my pleats can stay nice and flat. Again, if you don't have any pleats on your fabric, you don't have to worry about this step. So after that, now we're going to basically fold over the seam allowance for our armholes. So I'm going to fold over the seam allowance, and we're going to top stitch both armholes on the sewing machine. You want to make sure to repeat this process for your back as well. So after top stitching, as you guys can see, I have that folded over to the wrong side, and I have top stitched at 1/2 inch on the sewing machine. Now we're going to grab the top of our front. So now I'm folding over 1/2 inch and folding over another 1 inch. This is going to create the hole for our straps. So I'm folding over 1/2 inch and then folding over 1 inch. So you want to make sure everything is laying flat before you start sewing, because I do have the pleats, so I made sure to press this on the iron before I actually start sewing my edge down. So you want to make sure to sew right at the edge right here, as you guys can see, keeping it nice and flat and making sure that your pleats don't move. So after sewing it down, it should look something like this. Make sure to do this for your back pattern as well. So now we're going to attach our front and back together. So you want to make sure to connect right sides to right side, and we're just going to sew our side seams at 1/2 inch. So you want to make sure to do that for both side seams. After sewing that down, it should look something like this. You also want to make sure to keep pressing along the way so your seams are laying nice and flat. From then, we're going to finish up our hemline. So finishing up our hemline, we do have 1 inch seam allowance, so we're just going to be folding this twice, and we're going to top stitch this all around on the sewing machine. So I would also recommend you press this before you actually sew it down. Now we're going to move on to our straps. So for our straps, you want to cut out 2.5 by 40 inches long strips. So same from your fabric, and now we're going to fold that right sides to right sides and sew it down at 1/2 inch. So I went ahead and sewed this down at the sewing machine, as you guys can see, at that edge all the way down. And now we're just going to trim that to get the excess fabric out. So I do have a point turner here that helps me turn all my fabrics right side out. You can definitely use a safety pin or anything you want to use, but you just want to make sure to be able to turn over your strip to the right side out. Then we're just going to go ahead and actually press our strap out so it lays nice and flat. So as you guys can see, I've created 2 straps. Now a good way to just finish up the edge, you can just fold that over twice and just top stitch that on the sewing machine. So again, as you guys can see, the hemline has been finished, and now we're going to go ahead and actually insert our straps into our blouse. So to insert the straps, we're going to grab the straps, and then you're going to grab a safety pin, and this is what you're going to use to walk your straps into your blouse. So I'm just using the safety pin to walk my straps all the way from one end to the other. So one strap is going to go in the front of my blouse, and the other strap is going to go in the back of my blouse. So this is basically going to create our arms and shoulders for our blouse. So at this point, you are definitely done with your blouse. You have a completed pleated blouse, and it's so cute. You can definitely tie this in different ways, and when you put them on, just create them at different lengths for your shoulders depending on your size. And I like to think they can fit pretty much all sizes depending if you have the right measurements. But yeah, you have a cute pleated blouse done. So that's the end of this tutorial. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Sew Addict. So that is another transformative look in the books. I was so happy with the outcome of this tutorial. It just looked so cute to put on and blousey. I don't know. I kind of like blousey things sometimes, to be honest. I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I was super excited about it. If you did, please give this video a big thumbs up. And if you have any particular questions about this video or any of my other videos, please make sure to scroll down and leave me a couple of words. I'm going to be looking at those as well. Now, if you haven't hit the subscribe button already, I'm not really sure what you're waiting for. Please make sure to scroll down and hit the red subscribe button to be part of the Sew Addicts family, and you can see more awesome videos from me. And I hope to catch you awesome Sew Addicts next week.